All right, welcome and happy Saturday morning. This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow on KHTS Radio, AM 1220 and FM 98.1. And we are going to talk cars this morning. I'm joined by Chris Evertsen. Chris, how you doing this morning?
Charlie, it's great to be here. Sorry I couldn't be in the studio with you, but calling in is the next best thing.
Yeah, so we've got some fun stuff on tap today. It's really pretty funny. We inadvertently brought up a topic last week on Saturday, and it was about government mandated EVs and electric vehicles in general. And man, we really stirred up the hornet's nest, Chris. I mean, it's crazy how people were so fired up about electric cars. I didn't realize it. Did you?
Yeah, it's a hotter bed than I anticipated. I mean, everyone's pushing so hard for electric vehicles, all electric, all battery vehicles. And unbeknownst to us, there's a very strong underwhelming of people that don't want to see the combustion engine go away. If not for any other reason, they love the sound, but also they don't think that the battery powered vehicles are the way to go in the future.
Yeah, and I sort of get it. I mean, I love to drive my car. It'd be great if the fuel was a little cleaner. We in my Hummer, I've got a 2009 Hummer H2 SUT, which is a really rare car, as you know. And I run it on.
Yeah, but you can run E85 on that.
Yeah, right? And I'm running on an E85. I'm getting fuel for it right at the bottom of my hill in the Valencia area at the Shell station. And I'm paying $3.25 a gallon. I mean, it's really pretty amazing. So, I think the combustion engine, there's lots of ways to make it a little cleaner. And, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, though, in our next segment. I mean, before you and I start going at it and going to blows. But like I said, this is the Speed Traveler Roadshow, and we talk cars. We are going to talk some we're going to talk about Formula One a little bit later in the show. We're also going to talk about cars that you can buy now that are going up in value. We always talk about the depreciation cycle on the Speed Traveler, and that's where a car is, let's say it's $60,000 when new. Chris, we were talking about the Cadillac wagon, CTS-V wagon last week. It's a car that was about 60 grand new, a little less, and then it went down to as little as 30. And then it just started coming back up. And that's the time you want to buy a classic car or an exotic car, is when they're on their way back up in value. Definitely don't want to buy them new when they're going down. We want you to buy them on their way back up. Chris and I have bought and sold over 100 cars, and we definitely have been burned before. And that's part of the fun of this show, is we try and share our insight, which we have a lot. And
our successes and our losses.
Yeah, exactly. Luckily, it's been more successes of late. But we want you to be a better collector car, exotic car, and just car buyer in general. And also, we like to. Go ahead.
This is more for the enthusiast, the type of person that's not going to just go, oh, I can afford $150,000. I'm going to go buy that perfectly built Honda Type R, 1960, whatever. And this is more for the type of person that wants to find a value, doesn't have maybe the biggest purse to play with, and wants to buy at the smart time and maybe do some fun things with that car.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. And we don't sell cars per se. I mean, we do sell occasional personal cars. So it's not like, we're trying to hustle people to join our program. And we unfortunately don't have any of those programs, Chris, but we just like to share our advice. We're very passionate about cars. If you're out there listening right now and you're at a Cars and Coffee event, share our info with your buddies, because we want to keep growing the Speed Traveler, and we can only do that by way of our listeners.
Yeah, and if you are at a Cars and Coffee event, tell us about the event you're at. What car you may have brought to the show, what car that you like the best at the show you're at. We'd love seeing that kind of information from you folks as well.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific cars Chris and I like. This week, our featured marque is Honda. And it's a brand pretty near and dear to our heart, because we have a Honda S2000 race car. Chris and I just won the championship for the U.S. Touring Car Championship. And we were using two cars. We were actually using a BMW 3 Series and a Honda S2000. So we definitely know a lot about Hondas. Every week on the Speed Traveler Roadshow, we have a featured marque. if you want to go back and hear some other ones, we've done great shows, Chris, on Ferrari, Lotus, Mercedes. You can go back. You can go to our YouTube page, which is The Speed Traveler, and you can find those episodes. We did one last week on Cadillac, which was great. You can find those episodes. And if you're out there looking for a Cadillac, let's say, you should definitely go find that episode and listen in on Cadillac Info.
Absolutely. And if you like just checking out cars, you can always go to the Peterson Automotive Museum and check out the incredible selection they have there. I love going there. It's a little bit of a segue, Charlie, but for whatever reason, the Peterson Automotive Museum is near and dear to my heart. I love going there, and so I always have to give them a good mention.
Yeah, I agree. No, the Peterson's great. We're going to do an upcoming live show from the Peterson, so it should be fun. But yeah, getting back to today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about, as we mentioned, government mandated EVs. We're going to talk about cars that are up and coming, getting a little better, and increasing in value. We're also going to talk about some F1 in our later segment. But first, let's talk a little news. And actually, now that I mentioned F1, we should probably bring the viewers up to speed on what happened last weekend. Before we preview the Grand Prix of Brazil, we should probably bring the viewers up to speed a little bit on what happened last weekend at the Grand Prix of Mexico.
Yeah, and it was an exciting race. All eyes were on one driver in particular, Sergio Perez, who, he did well in qualifying. He was up near the front end of the qualifying grid, not as high as he would like to have been, but then got a tremendous start in the race before things went haywire in turn one.
Yeah, he got into turn one and they tried to go 3 wide. That was with Max Verstappen in the Red Bull and Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. And Checo got an amazing start. It was an 800-meter run down to turn one, so you could definitely do some drafting. And Checo got an amazing run. He just couldn't quite get the car to turn in, could he?
No, he didn't quite get it turned in. There's been some consternation about the line that Max Verstappen took into turn one. He was very late on the apex himself, which kind of created that pinching effect of Charles Leclerc between the two Red Bulls. And unfortunately, on the outside of that, Checo was unable to continue from his spin. Charles Leclerc had some damage to his front wing. The little end plate popped off. But still was able to kind of hang in there and run in second place while Max Verstappen started to walk away with the race already.
Yeah, I mean, that's the theme for the year, isn't it? Max Verstappen, or the theme for the last 2 years is Max is just almost unstoppable. And I think Checo Perez, it was his home Grand Prix. People were going absolutely nuts. And I think that it was probably his best move to try and pull that off on the outside in turn one. Even though it ended up being dangerous, it probably was his best chance to get to the front.
Oh, absolutely. It was either he got there and he made the move or he was 8th or 9th.
Yeah,
exactly. It was either he's going to go way, way back in the field and really mess up his race or go for the lead. And like Ayrton Senna has said, since we're going to talk about Brazil as the next race, as Ayrton Senna has said, if you're no longer going for the hole, you are no longer a race car driver. And Checo went for it.
Yeah. But quickly to review the race, Hamilton and the Mercedes ended up getting up to second place. Ferraris weren't bad. Ferraris were third and fourth. So really not too bad. And you kind of have to give a little credit to the AlphaTauri for Daniel Ricciardo, who made his way to seventh, I believe. And, earned a lot of points for his fledgling team.
Yeah, that was a great drive by Danny Rick. It was great to see that kind of aggression out of him. He was really pushing the car hard. He was pushing his teammate too. He's shown great pace after coming back from a broken wrist.
Yeah.
And he's just doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Lewis Hamilton in second place, which was a huge deal in the championship points. Checo Perez not getting any points, currently sitting second place in the points. And with Lewis Hamilton getting second place in the race, was really able to close that gap. And honestly, I didn't think second place was even going to be attainable for anybody other than a Red Bull driver. But look at what Lewis Hamilton has been able to do in the last few races.
Yeah, and for those of you that are somewhat new to Formula One, Formula One is all the rage in the States right now. And the Red Bull team with Max Verstappen has been dominant for 3 years. And the Mercedes team is coming back, and they're doing quite well towards the end of the season here. And also our friends over at McLaren, they're really coming on this time of year.
Yeah, it's really been great to watch the Mercedes and the McLarens close the gap on Red Bull. The beginning of the season, the gap to Max Verstappen, the slowing Max Verstappen was 35 seconds. And now a pushing Max is only a few seconds in front of second place. So the battle's really tightening up at the front end.
Yeah.
And for the cars that are going faster, that's great. But the cars that are going slower, oh my goodness, what happened to Aston Martin?
Yeah, at the start of the year, I think Fernando Alonso was on the podium for the first 5 or 6 races, and they are just lost right now.
Lost at sea. And look at what happened in Mexico. Was it a double DNF, or did Lance end up finishing the race in point?
I don't recall. I think he was 11th. I'll have to check that. But
I know Alonso retired, and it's been mechanical issues and just a horribly slow car.
Yeah.
But to our mark of the day, Honda in 2026, Honda's officially making its return to Formula One with a partnership with Aston Martin.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's crazy news. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very relevant. Honda had been with the all-dominant Red Bull team for the last, 4 or 5 years, officially
up until 2022.
Yeah.
But they are still providing the engines, but they're being badged as Red Bull engines.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really exciting news on Honda coming back. We heard last week, we were talking about the Cadillac brand, and Michael Andretti wanting to bring the Cadillac brand back to Formula One as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting years coming up here, next year and the following years, with the new teams, new manufacturers, some new rules on hybrid technology. It's going to be exciting. I think the switch is going to cause Red Bull to have to make some adjustments, which is going to allow the gaps between their dominance and the other teams become a little bit tighter, a little bit closer.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a more F1 a little bit later in the show. We're going to preview the Grand Prix of Brazil. And before we jump off the news topic, Chris, I just wanted to make a quick note. It's a little topical. We are talking about Honda today, but the CEO of Toyota thinks that he has developed something that's going to change the course of automotive history. And they have developed a ammonia powered engine. Right now it only has 171 horsepower. It's 4 cylinders. It does require some gas to run. It takes about 10% gas to make it run properly. But they claim that they can improve emissions and combustion engines by 90%, which, if you do that math out in a long way, electric cars, there's a misconception that they're totally clean. It's not easy to build those motors. The guys at Toyota might be onto something.
I would agree with you on that one, Charlie. I'm excited about where they're going with this ammonia-based fuel, which, like you mentioned, has to have a mix of regular gasoline in it. Actually, they might even switch that to diesel, as some of the later news I heard. But I think it's fantastic. Again, it's only 10% gasoline. It's kind of like E85. It's diminishing the carbon footprint of the combustion engine with that. My issue is that Toyota has partnered up with a company called CAG, which is a Chinese company wholly owned by the state of China.
Right. I saw that. Yeah, I think that unfortunately you're right, but that does create the big issue. It's so funny. I was so excited about this ammonia engine, and then I saw that they had partnered with a Chinese government-owned company. I'm like, oh boy,
Yeah, and I get it, because there are no environmental impact or issues that they need to kind of contend with like you do here in the United States, which I am highly appreciative of.
Yeah.
As much as I despise the catalytic converter, I understand its relevance.
Totally. Yeah.
It'd be nice, though, if we could get some of that development happening here in the United States. This is not something that we can't do here.
Yeah, we're going to come back and do a whole segment on EV mandates
Oh man, I just got my soapbox out. I was already standing on it.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But this is the Speed Traveler Roadshow. I'm Charlie Frank, and I'm along here with Chris Evertsen. And we've made our careers in the automotive world. We're race car drivers, we're stunt drivers, and we teach race car driving. We collect cars. And we have a lot of fun along the way. But join us back here in a second. We're going to take a quick break, and you are listening to KHTS Radio. All right, welcome back. This is the Speed Traveler Roadshow. It's Cars and Coffee time on Saturday morning here at KHTS Radio, AM 1220 and FM 98.1 in the Santa Clarita area. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look for The Speed Traveler. You can find our channel, and you can listen to this episode, which our featured marque is Honda. You can also listen to all our other episodes where we've had Ferrari and Cadillac and Corvette and Mustang and lots of great brands. So go back. If you're looking for a Corvette, go back and find our episode on the Corvette, and you'll hopefully get some great knowledge. But I'm joined back again with Chris Evertsen, my co-host. And Chris, we are going to talk a little bit about government mandated EVs and EV in general. It's not like either of us are very political, but we brought this topic up last week, and man, we really stirred up the beehive, didn't we?
We sure did, and I'm actually glad we did, because it's something that I think you and I both have felt over the past few years with the pressure of the all-electric battery, the government mandates to be off combustion engines in 2035 here in California. It varies around the country, and quite frankly, that kind of freaks me out twofold.
Yeah, exactly.
One, how are we going to power all these cars? And two, we are completely beholden to an entity outside the United States for absolutely everything.
Yeah, no, it's scary, and it's funny if you look at it from 30,000 feet from above, you'd be like, does this seem like a great idea? You're mining materials in Africa using child labor. And these poor kids are there mining cobalt in Africa, and they're 10 and 12 years old, and they're under horrendous conditions. Then you're putting the materials on the most polluting vehicle in the world, which is a tanker ship, and, blowing a bunch of smoke all the way to China. Then you're letting China build a battery in an area where there's really very little or no environmental restrictions whatsoever. And then you're putting it back on the most polluting vehicle in the world, which is a tanker truck or a tanker ship, and you're sending it to the US. And then you're going from there. And so you're giving up our energy, our vehicle propulsion power to really an adversary. And
from start to finish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's from getting the materials to make the product, to manufacturing the product, to maintaining the product. Right. And then, by the way, all the microchips where they're completely controlled from some other entity. Right. It freaks me out.
No, yeah. And I think you're exactly right. And you brought up a good point last week. You said you're not opposed to electric car, and in the right place, time, location, maybe in downtown Los Angeles or in Santa Monica, California, or, in downtown Chicago, where you've got an abundance of energy, and you've got a need for maybe smaller cars and less polluting cars, it makes some sense. But,
and an infrastructure platform to maybe work from. But I mean, anytime you try to go from Chicago to, Whitefish Bay in Milwaukee,
right.
It's not that far, but it's outside the range of an electric vehicle.
Yeah. So,
it's magnified here in California. Anyone that lives in Los Angeles and tries to get to Las Vegas, you can't do it.
Right. But what I was getting at, and talking, basically looking at it from 30,000 feet, was it just, you wonder how it got to this point, where it feels like the crazy train's going 200 miles an hour towards a brick wall. Like was it influence on social media, influence from Elon Musk? Is it influence from Chinese lobbyists, because they have a lot to gain by going all electric? Is it the electric industry? I don't know. Is it all of the above?
Yeah, I was going to go. The answer is yes, all of the above. I mean, no one's going to spout out any of this stuff unless it means some kind of financial gain to them. Everything's about the almighty
Right.
dollar, peso, yen, whatever you want to call it, whatever your monetary system is.
Right.
It's all about the money. And I'd like to even step back to your 30,000 foot analogy. Imagine there's been talk about mining the Salton Sea here in California for the lithium, which is also in the battery technology here in the United States. And if you think of that from the 30,000 feet, the Salton Sea basically is Bureau of Land Management, property or land. And I have to use all the words there. And if we were to mine that, it would be stripped of all its valuables in the under 10 years. And then you would have this just mined out area that just looks like ash and
Right.
is completely useless for any other purpose after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing in Africa. And even if we try to do that here, why would we do that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And for those of you who don't know, the Salton Sea is a little bit southeast of Palm Desert, where the famous Coachella Music Festival is. And interestingly, 10 years ago, it basically was an abandoned town. There were some docks and some boat houses and some old broken down houses. Now all of a sudden it's the hottest commodity in the world because they realized you could mine lithium, or you could make lithium from the area. So it really went from absolutely abandoned. Do you remember, Chris, like you drive by and there's homes with like windows broken out in front? And
everything was target practice.
Yeah, and now it's totally changed. But you bring up a good point. I mean, apparently we have inside the United States, we have abundant amounts of the raw materials necessary to make the batteries. But as you said, there's two issues there. First issue is the EPA won't let us mine it. And secondly,
for good reason.
And secondly, it would destroy the landscape. So our thought here is, we like the combustion engine. I like the sound of it. I like how it runs. What alternatives are out there that we can come up with that can help run a car as we know it, and not be reliant on one of our biggest adversaries in the world, which is China.
Right. And, we take that to Texas, where it's been shown there's some areas in Texas where they just have an abundance of land to mine for the materials for lithium and everything like that. And this is Texas, bear that in mind, and they don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, no, I think it's really funny. We brought this topic up last week, as we mentioned, and since then we've talked to a lot of people, and man, are people fired up. If you scratch the surface of this issue, especially car guys, doesn't matter whether you're Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever. I mean, people are really fired up about this issue.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's take the spin. We're looking at the problems with this. Why don't we take a quick moment and look at what are possible different solutions moving forward? We've talked a little bit about Toyota's GAC partnership and the ammonia-powered four-cylinder engine, which I think is a point in the right direction. I mean, back in 1977, we started going to much more fuel-efficient combustion engines because of the gas crisis in 1977. And all of a sudden, that Toyota four-cylinder engine, that Honda four-cylinder engine, that was the engine to have. Even the Volkswagen had a great motor for all of their little VW Rabbits and everything else. You know, these are very efficient engines. Yeah. And so we've shown the ability to make that. Why can't we make that now?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that I think the lobby, the electric car lobby, and the fact that it's kind of like the latest, greatest, coolest thing to talk about on social media. I think that all those things have kind of fueled that industry. But there certainly definitely needs to be some alternatives. And there are some alternatives coming up. We haven't mentioned Pat Boone, which I wasn't even sure that Pat was still around. But I guess he is an investor in a company called Aircar. And they're making these really lightweight carbon fiber cars that are powered by compressed air. I mean, probably not going to work, if you're in an area where there's a bunch of Suburbans around that weigh 7,000 pounds that'll run you over. But these are really light cars. They're certainly better than those ridiculous electric scooters that they've got all over the place in Santa Monica and LA. But
Right.
you get in this little vehicle, it's powered by compressed air. It's very light and efficient, has really small wheels. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and you actually tap into another aspect of all of that, and that is these electric cars weigh 5,000 pounds.
Yeah,
Right?
plus,
That's
right.
just a passenger vehicle. That's not a truck. That's a passenger vehicle. And the amount of pressure that puts on the infrastructure, our highways, our roads, it's very easy for that heavy car. You lock up that car that with the ABS braking and everything on blacktop, it's going to tear the ground up.
Yeah.
And it's going to beat the ground up more and more. And that's part of our infrastructure, which is another issue. But, it's the lighter car like Pat Boone's Air car is not going to have that same kind of impact on the roadways.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty clever, but definitely lots of alternatives. We're actually bumping up against a hard stop here, Chris, but definitely if you have opinions on the electric EV mandate, electric cars in general, electric trucks, we haven't even really got onto that subject yet, but there's a lot of truckers who definitely don't want to give up their ability to make money. Please reach out to us. You can reach out to us at the Speed Traveler YouTube page. Just check it out. And there's lots of places to write a comment. You can reach out to us on Instagram. And our handle at Instagram is the Speed Traveler. And let us know your thoughts. Chris and I would really like to know. Once again, I'm Charlie Frank, along with Chris Evertsen. And we are your hosts for the Speed Traveler Roadshow. We're going to take a quick break, Chris, and then we're going to come back and we are going to talk about Hondas that we see coming up in value in the future. Thanks for listening. All right. Welcome back to the Speed Traveler Cars and Coffee. We are coming to you on Saturday morning. It is Cars and Coffee time on KHTS Radio, AM 1220, FM 98.1. Also available at hometownstation.com. Also, you can find us and you find all of our episodes. If you missed the start of this one and you want to go back and hear it, or you want to hear one of our other episodes, you can check us out at The Speed Traveler on YouTube. And you can check out our episodes there. Also, Chris, we are available on all your favorite podcast networks. So just go to your favorite one, type in The Speed Traveler, and you can click that you want to be notified when a new episode hits. And then that way you'll never miss one.
So what you're saying is Google The Speed Traveler.
Exactly.
And you will find us.
Exactly. Find your favorite way to enjoy it. I feel an urge to tell people how to do it step by step, but I think that's just a little bit of my OCD.
Well, at least you didn't have to translate those instructions from Chinese.
Exactly. But we are talking Cars and Coffee this morning. We're talking Honda. That is our featured marque. Every week here on the Speed Traveler Roadshow, we have a featured marque, and we've done lots of cars up till now. Today's Honda, which is near and dear to our heart, Chris, because we have a Honda S2000 race car.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic because, not only has Honda had a storied history in the motorsports world, but we're currently, like you mentioned, running the S2K, which, by the way, we bought that car. We did some work to it. We did some off-season testing. We showed up the first race of the season. And man, it was fast right out of the gun, wasn't it? It took the win in race number 1 in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
in the United States Touring Car Championship.
It sure was. It was. It started the season off well, and it was just such a fun car to drive. For those of you who have been to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we're actually talking about the Pirelli Proving Grounds. That's where the road races are, and they're outside the big oval. But it's a great track. It's long straightaways and really tight corners. So you got to be on the brakes at the right time. You got to turn in at the right time. And it's a great little track. It's really rewarding.
Yeah. And to the Honda S2K, the Honda S2000, what's unique about that car to almost every other Honda on the market, it's rear wheel drive.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Almost every car you can get from Honda, particularly the new cars today, they're all front wheel or all wheel drive cars. You could get the NSX and rear wheel drive, but you're going to spend $130,000 doing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. Ironically, the newer Acura NSX, it was 2017 to 2022. the prices have come down a bit on those. And, we always talk about depreciation cycle in particularly like a new car like that. People were paying 200 grand for them. You could find them as low as 115 or so now. So the question is, when do they stop going down and they start going up? And that's when you really want to buy a car. If you're looking at a depreciation cycle, Ferrari is also a great example of that. That you buy them new, they go down, they go down, they go down. And then at some point they stop going down and they start going back up again. So yeah, you mentioned the Acura NSX. If you've got to spare 115 grand, you might want to take a look at it. But back to the S2000, Chris. Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's so unique and so different. 2-seat rear wheel drive. They just don't make about 237 to 240 horsepower. They actually did make a decent amount of them, but it's hard to find them in good shape because people, beat up on them and took them to the racetrack.
Yeah, it's a driver's car, definitely. It's so fun to drive. It's not surprising that it became such a driver's car. But I will say this: the parts available to the S2K are plentiful. I mean, the body panels all bolt on and off nice and easily if you need to replace the body panel. I mean, a crunched chassis, that's a different story, but everything else that just bolts on is readily available.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there's lots of parts out there. It's a Honda, so it's going to run well. I mean, there's two versions. There's the AP1, which was 2000 to 2004, and then there's the AP2, which got a little bit larger motor. It went from 2 liter to 2.2, and both of them are around 237 to 240 horsepower. Some people prefer the AP1 because they feel like the steering is a little quicker in the AP1. They changed it a little bit in the AP2. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting how that changed.
Yeah, and
that's the factor that changed.
And we learned about that firsthand when we were in Sonoma this year, and the electric power steering went out in our S2000, and it was not an easy car to drive without power steering. But we learned about the difference between the AP1 and the AP2. But overall, generally, you can find them from probably 17, 18, 20,000 and up right now. It's really not bad. It's not like you're buying a Ferrari, which is going to cost you an arm and a leg to maintain. I mean, this is a Honda. It's rear wheel drive. It's 2 seats. They may not make anything ever like this again. So I'm really high on that car as a future collector.
I'm high on it as a current collector. I mean, you mentioned the NSX being down at 115. To answer that question, I don't think it's going to go a whole lot lower. I think that's at the bottom of its depreciation curve, and now is the time to get that car.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's a Honda. I've had Honda generators. Honda started with motorcycles and making engines. They moved into cars, I think in the early 60s, I guess it was. But I've had a Honda generator, an EU 2000 that I bought in 1997, and I had to write a letter to Honda and complain because it lasted me 22 years before something finally broke. Yeah. And I had to replace one of the rubber feet.
Yeah.
And so I was really disappointed with that.
That's a good point. No, that's a great point. If you're a new collector, you probably don't want to go all in on a 50-year-old Ferrari, And
you're going to be working on it.
Yeah. And we did it
with phrase, you're going to be looking for parts that you just cannot find and cannot be replicated.
And very expensive parts. Exactly. So, the Honda S2000 represents a good way to get into the collector market. I like the last year, which is 2009, but those have already started to go back up again. We saw this morning we both looked on Car Gurus. By the way, Car Gurus, they don't pay us, but it's a great resource. I just love their layout. You can go and do a nationwide search, and in 30 seconds, you get a really good sense of what the market is because you're seeing cars from all over the country. But we saw some this morning, 2009s, anywhere from 30,000 with higher miles to 45,000 with low miles. And I think before we move on, that's a great car.
It really is. And I kind of want to tie it into the current model Honda vehicles. Like if we look at the new Honda Civic Type R, that Type R, we talked about them briefly with the NSX. It started, I think, in 93.
Yep.
That's accurate. And then you mentioned the later model here in 2000, ran up to 2018.
Oh, yeah.
Which is also the Type
Yeah, the original NSX 91 to 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
And now you can currently get the Civic Type R, and to that efficiency, it's got 300 horsepower and a little 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, 315 horsepower. Take this into account. 1977 horsepower. It would require something out of GM, big block, to produce that kind of horsepower.
Yeah, exactly. And it's indirectly you're making an argument for more efficient engines and vehicles where you may not need electric vehicles. So yeah, that's a nice way to bookend our earlier topic.
And it's available in a 6-speed manual. So,
and that's a car. If you want one of those, you could still find them at Honda dealers. They're not getting much of a premium. We have a racing buddy named Gordon Poon, and he went and found one, I believe, in Tennessee. Had our buddy Ali drive it back for him, and I think he paid sticker or maybe a couple thousand over. That was about it, but that's not bad.
Not bad at all.
And one thing to keep in mind is that if you really like the Honda Civic Type R, is just that we've been talking about the depreciation curve. I mean, these may not go down that much, but if they do go down, maybe in 5 years, if you keep your eye on it and you really love that car, check back in 5 years. You'll find them for less than sticker, and it's definitely a car that's going to go back up in value at some point.
And you brought up a good point in bringing up Gordon Poon and his getting that car out of Indiana. If you are looking for a used specific car that you really want, don't just look in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to use the map feature on whatever search engine you're looking at or car service you're looking at. Look in these other states, I mean, I know people like Arizona is a good state. People worry about valley fever being in the air conditioning unit. Okay, fine.
Right.
But it's a dry climate, and it's a great place to get cars out of because of the dry climate.
Yeah. And that you bring up a good point. If you're going to go into the classic car or collector car or exotic car market, you got to do your homework, but that's half the fun. I mean, you've just got to look on every site and look at every site, including, we mentioned Car Gurus this morning. There's also Auto Trader that we use a lot. There's cars.com. There's Bring a Trailer, which is an auction site. I mean, they're getting premium prices there these days. There's Hemmings, Hemmings.com, and then there's Haggerty. So there's a lot of sources for you. And what we didn't mention is Craigslist. If you go to Craigslist and you look for, let's say, Los Angeles used cars, there is an option to go to a map on the far left, a pull down menu, and you go to the map, you can expand it to half the country and you could see what's out there for sale by owner across half the country. And I mean, that is the way you get a bargain. You make your money on the way in, not paying full price at a dealer.
That's absolutely right. And you hit on using Craigslist, make sure you do hit the for sale by owner.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get a lot of
dealer ads,
dealership ads and whatnot, and they have nothing to do with the car that you're actually looking for.
Yeah, but that basically concludes this segment. We are going to come back, Chris, and we're going to talk a little F1 preview, the Grand Prix of Brazil coming up. My name is Charlie Frank, and I'm along here with Chris Evertsen. We are the Speed Travelers. We spent our whole lives in the automotive industry, racing cars, teaching racing. We're stunt car drivers. We love the automotive industry. So reach out to us if you have any questions on cars, if you have questions about going racing. A question I get a lot, Chris, right now is, how does my kid go racing? He wants to be a Formula One driver. So we're happy to answer any of those questions. You are listening to us here on KHTS Radio, AM 1220 and FM 98.1 in Valencia. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Speed Traveler Roadshow. It is Cars and Coffee time on Saturday morning, and we are talking government EV mandates. We're talking Honda, our featured marque. We're talking some F1 news, and we're talking classic and collector cars. I am Charlie Frank, and I'm here along with my co-host, Chris Evertsen. How you doing, Chris?
Oh, Charlie, it's so great to be here, and I love this topic matter. We're back to F1 again. We got Brazil coming up, and it's an exciting race. But, if you want to catch up on all of our news, check us out anywhere over the interwebs at The Speed Traveler. You can find us on YouTube, website, your favorite podcast, and of course, hometown station radio, AM 1220, which you're listening to live right now, Saturday morning.
All right. Well, we've got last weekend was Grand Prix in Mexico. I mean, they just do everything they can. They throw everything in the kitchen sink at Max Verstappen, but he just keeps winning.
Yeah, can't stop that beast, man. He's been training for this his whole life, and it's clearly paying dividends. I mean, his points gap right now is he's got more than double the points of his teammate Sergio Perez, who's in second place with 240 points. Lewis Hamilton, sitting in third place, has closed the gap dramatically at 220. So Lewis Hamilton, with a good race in Brazil, could take the number 2 spot in the Drivers' Championship points.
Yeah, and the Brazilian circuit, it's at Interlagos. It's a great track because they have a long front straightaway, so it offers a good opportunity for passing.
Yeah, and you know what? That's how Lewis Hamilton got his first championship, was making those big passes on the last lap.
That's
I think it was in the rain at Interlagos, taken away from Felipe Massa in the Ferrari.
Yeah, that's right. The championship battle changed hands 3 or 4 times, I think, on the very last lap at Interlagos circuit at Brazil in, what was that, 2007 or 8? But unbelievable.
Yeah, it was it's way back. No, it was what year was that? Because Kimi Räikkönen's the last Formula One world champion in 2007.
Yeah.
So, and Lewis has, so what was it, 2009? No, that was.
Yeah.
Oh, we're getting off track.
Yeah, we're getting off track here, but we've got, we're just doing a quick preview on this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. What do you think of the Ferraris?
Which is a sprint race format.
There is a sprint race on Saturday. You're right. It's a sprint race weekend. There's a sprint race on Saturday and then the main race on Sunday. What do you think of Ferrari? Do you think they have any chance, since they are fast in a straight line?
You know, I think they'll probably do well at this track in a single lap format. I think their qualifying will probably be pretty good, but I just don't think they're going to have the pace to really compete for second place.
Right. I mean, maybe in the sprint race.
Maybe in the sprint race. But honestly, if I go to the sprint race, I'm going to give my nod back to McLaren in the sprint race.
Yep.
But I think the long race format's going to suit more of the Mercedes.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And Lewis Hamilton has been quick for sure. He's been right there, and so he probably offers and George Russell, the other Mercedes driver, they offer the biggest challenge most likely to Max and the Red Bull team.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton is driving with fire in his belly. I mean, I haven't seen this kind of fortitude out of Lewis Hamilton, until the last few races of the season. Beginning of the year, it seemed like he was trying, but not really. He wasn't comfortable with the car, but now he's really, really pushing the pace. And it's outperforming George Russell substantially.
Yeah, he really is. I'm just getting clarification. That was 15 years ago. 2008 it was the year that Lewis Hamilton beat Felipe Massa at the Brazilian Grand Prix. But what about McLaren? They as of late, Lando Norris made his way to 5th place, starting from 17th last weekend in Mexico. What do you think his chances are this weekend?
If he drives with that kind of patience and intelligence, there's nothing the McLarens can't do. Zach Brown's given them, and that entire team has given Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris a great platform upon which to race from, and they are drivers that can push that car to the front of the peloton.
All right, so pretty quickly, since I went first last weekend, do you want to take a pick for this weekend's winner? And
I'm sticking to my guns. Okay, it's going to be Lewis Hamilton, and an honorary nod to both the Toro Rossos. AlphaTauris, excuse me,
right,
in the sprint race.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that. And you know what? I'm going to go back to the well as well. I like Lando Norris this weekend. And as you said, I'm going to give a nod for the sprint race to Ferrari. I think they may just have enough pace for that. But that is this weekend. 2 weeks from now, on a Saturday night, we are going to Las Vegas, and we are going to do a show from Las Vegas, which is going to be the home of the first annual Well, actually, you know what? There was a Las Vegas Grand Prix in 1983, so it's not really the first annual.
83 and 82 and 83.
Yeah.
Or was it 83 and 84?
Yeah, and I think Ilya, or no, was it Andre de Cesares?
Andre de Cesares
may have won one of those.
He did in the Alfa Romeo.
Yeah. And also Max Verstappen's girlfriend, Kelly Piquet, I think her father, Nelson Piquet, might have won one of those races as well. But Chris,
I think you're correct.
Pretty exciting. Vegas is coming up in 2 weeks.
That's going to be a night of lights and speed.
Yeah, well said. All right. Well, you have been listening to the Speed Traveler Roadshow here on KHTS Radio AM 1220. You can also listen to us at hometownstation.com. You can listen to us at the KHTS Radio site on YouTube, as well as the Speed Traveler site on YouTube. And Chris, it's been a fun episode. A lot of talk about government mandated EVs and Honda and Formula One.
It's been fun, and we're going to be talking more about this whole EV thing, I can assure you.
Yeah, please reach out to us via YouTube, the Speed Traveler page on YouTube or Instagram, and we will see you here next Saturday. Thanks for listening.